made another PowerPoint presentation for you. Welcome to part 2 of your most anticipated reads of 2025, well, releases of 2025. This is part of the You Recommend series where I gather other readers' preferences and then tell you what they are, so it hopefully saves you some time and you don't have to rely on my taste. Basically, I am a tool, and hopefully it's a useful one. So I sat and collated the data, and I have found the most anticipated releases decided by you, and I separated them by month. So we're gonna cover July and December. But because this is an informative video, I'm gonna stop yapping and actually get on with the presentation. Hello. If you did miss the first one and kind of want to go and have a refresher, we'll link that down below. And then one last disclaimer before we go on to the books. This is a video by readers, for readers, meaning that I'm not going to go into very detailed description of any of these books. Mainly also because we have 62 of them. So if I did do that, it would be a very unpleasant experience for me. It's just too many. But because this is geared for readers, I am confident that a lot of you already will know what we're kind of talking about. So this is just like a crash course of the upcoming releases that you, in particular, were excited about. And then some of them maybe you've missed and wanted to know about. Firstly, on the first, so it's already out, we have the third book in HMRC series by Juno Dawson called Human Rights. And then we also have something exciting for the Critical Role fans, which is a D&D game podcast. As far as I know, this is a book they've written that was like a book in game, which is quite fun. It's called Tusk Love and seems to be having quite a lot of cozy vibes even just from the cover. Then on the 8th of July, we have the fourth book in the House of Devils series called City of Smoke and Brimstone. It is a fantasy romance paranormal book. On the 15th of July, we have the sequel to Jasad Air called Jasad Crown. It is a adult, but I do hear that it reads sometimes YA, so if you're looking for a crossover, that's also a good one. Fantasy. And then excitedly, for those who have read Spell Shop, which I know is a lot of you, it was top read book, I think, the last autumn equinox. So the sequel is coming out. It's called The Enchanted Greenhouse. This is a cozy romance fantasy. Came up quite a lot in the recommendations list, but not as much as The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which is a sister novel to the regular society, no, the very secret society of irregular witches, I think is the title. And I did mark with a little heart the top 3 recommendations by just the sheer number of people saying that they really are anticipating that release this year, the second half of this year. And this one came up as second place. On the 22nd, we have Arcana Academy, and this is a dark academia romantasy. Continuing with July with a couple more releases, very excitedly for myself, we have a new Holly Jackson book. This is the author of Good Girl's Guide to Murder, author by author for me, because it never fails to just get me reading. If I'm in a slump, this is the cure. So I'm really hopeful for this one as well, as similarly to the other previous books by the author, this is also a kind of mystery thriller, contemporary, and it's YA. And on the same day, we also have a sci-fi novella called Volatile Memory coming out. And the 29th of July, we have the sequel to A Study in Drowning called Ethereal Dreaming, which is a young adult dark academia, which we have a couple more, I think, in July as well. One more. Again, on the 29th, we have Silver Cloak coming out as a traditionally published book, because this was an indie one, so a lot of people probably have already read it, but it is coming out traditionally fantasy romance with some sci-fi elements. And then also on the 29th, we have another dark academia young adult book called Immortal Consequences, which I'm also quite excited for. August. We have the third book, I think, the third book in the Assistant to the Villain series called Accomplice to the Villain. It is a kind of silly, goofy, cozy fantasy romance coming out on the 5th. As well, on the same day, a book called Girls of Dark Divine, which is a horror gothic fantasy, but also young adult. We have a new Bridget Kemmerer book, who is the author of A Curse so Dark and Lonely, called Warrior Princess Assassin. This one is actually adult. I want to say this is their first adult book, but I could be wrong, but I want to say I'm right. But I could be wrong. So that's quite exciting, because I did have a good time, especially with the second book in that series. And then on the 19th of August, the third book in the Monsters trilogy. I think that's what it's called. And it's called Once a Villain. The first one is only a monster. YA fantasy that has time travel. Couple more in August still. We have a book with a fun name. It's called Not a Cult. Well, it's not a cult. It's a contemporary mystery thriller, obviously dealing with cults, and it's also YA and coming out on the 22nd. And the 26th of August is the book with the most mentions by far in this batch of recommendations. And it is Catabasis is giving Babble again. I know some people say Babel. That, to me, that sounds too much like Beyblade. So it's Babble to me. But this is a dark academia fantasy romance. I think this is one of the more romance-leaning books of R.F. Kuang from the ones that we've had. And it deals with some mythology as well. But it is definitely your most anticipated release of the second half of 2022. What? 2025. Hello? On the same day, the 26th of August, we have Direbound, which I also want to say was indie publication before, but is getting traditionally published. And it is a romantasy with vampires. And then on the 28th, we have the second book in the Tales of Monstrous Heart series, an adult fae gothic fantasy with romance. Romance is just everywhere though I don't trust it anymore because the tag appears everywhere and I don't know how much of it is marketing and how much of it is true. Okay, September, buckle up folks. There's a lot going on in September. September is a busy release month. Same with October, I think. And then it kind of trickles down a little bit. On the 2nd of September, also one that was mentioned quite a lot, Wild Reverence. This is, I want to say again, a companion book of Divine Rivals. It's set in the same world, which is a YA fantasy book. On the same day, we have another YA Dark Academia, which seems to be a good year for YA Dark Academia, I feel, called When We Were Monsters by Jennifer Niven. And then we have a new ML Rio book, who is the author of We Were Villains. So this one is a adult thriller mystery / horror. On the same day, we have House of Idol? I don't know. Which is another adult horror with the theme of cults. That's 2 of culty books in the list so far. Still on the 9th, I think we're going to continue to be on the 9th for a while. We have A Land So Wide, which is an adult historical horror goth fantasy. Then we have another Dan Brown book. And you know what? This is the 6th book of the Robert Langdon series, which is your Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code. And then there's more. It's called The Secret of Secrets, and it is kind of a crime thriller book. On the 11th, the Samantha Shannon fans are going to be very excited to be reading Among the Burning Flowers. And this is, I want to say, a novella prequel, because it's 0.5 in the Roots of Chaos series. Still in September. 23rd, the second and final book in the Charlatan duology, Thief of Night, and it is an adult urban fantasy. And then on the 23rd as well, we have a very anticipated, and by myself as well, Mona Awad, second book to the Bunny series. And so this is another kind of dark academia, unreliable narrator, horror-ish, literary-ish book called We Love You, Bunny. Very excited. I've become quite a big fan of Mona. Another one that came up a lot was Alchemized, which is a adult dark romance fantasy coming out on the 23rd as well. Still on the 23rd, we are back with a dark romance. This one has a bit more of a thriller twist as well. It's called Tourist Season. And still on the 23rd, we really just picked a couple of days and released everything. We have the only graphic novel on the list, actually, and it's also the only middle grade on the list by yourselves. It's called Scarlet Morning. Still on the 23rd, we have a historical gothic romance called Ladies in Hating. Oh, Ladies in Hating is also a third book in Belvoir's library, and this is the 5th book, wow, in Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman. Which is kind of like a cozy mystery thriller. Still a little bit in September, we have 3 more left. On the 25th, we have the cozy witchy fantasy called Uncharmed. This is the second book and a sequel to Rewitched. On the 30th, we have a little novella in the Belladonna series. It's called Holly, Gothic YA fantasy. And then also on the 30th, we have a retelling called Make Me a Monster with some horror elements, and it's also YA. All right, October. On the 7th, the sequel to, I want to say The Witch King? I can't remember now. But it's called Queen Demon, and it is the second book in the new Martha Wells series. We had the first one last year. I think it was very anticipated by you as well, and it was on the list again, which is an epic fantasy. Then we have the first adult book by Stephanie Garber, also appeared quite a few times in the list. It has historical elements. It is also tagged as dark academia, and it's of course a fantasy called Alchemy of Secrets. We also have A Mouthful of Dust, which actually is the 6th book in the Singing Hills cycle. This one is a short stories collection in the fantasy genre as well. Ali Hazelwood is releasing a book called Mate, which is a sequel to the book called Bride, I think. Bride was also the name of the first book, and it is a paranormal romance, kind of werewolf vampire vibes. Also appeared quite a few times on the list. Then still on the 7th, what did I tell you about a couple of dates? We have Cinder House, which is a fantasy retelling, but also a short one, so it's a novella. Caitlin Starling is coming out with a book on the 14th called The Graceview Patient. This is a gothic mystery thriller with some horror elements as well, and it's an adult category. And then on the 14th, we have the third book in the Of the Ice romance series that heavily focuses on sport themes as well. October continued. Also on the 14th, we have a cozy fantasy called The Keeper of Magical Things, a very cute cover. Another one on the 14th, we have a fantasy horror thriller called The Works of Vermin, an Adrian Tchaikovsky book on the 15th. This is a novella, I want to say. It is 2.5 marked in the Tyrant Philosopher series, and the book is called Lives of Bitter Rain. On the 21st, we have a urban paranormal short stories collection called Blind Date with a Werewolf. On the same day when they burned the butterfly, which is a historical sci-fi fantasy, is also coming out. This one was mentioned not actually as many times as I maybe expected, but when it was mentioned, it was with such gusto. I think people have been anticipating this for a very long time, so I'm very happy for the fans to actually finally get this book. Book 3 in the Book of Dust series, and it's called The Rose Field, coming out on the 23rd of October. Same day, we have Firstborn of the Sun, which is an epic high fantasy in the adult category. And then a couple more in October, we have another high fantasy called The Blackfire Blade. This is the second book in the Last Legacy series. The last book in October is by Alexi Harrow. On the 28th, as always, it has a historical element. It is Alexi Harrow. And it's called The Everlasting. Okay, November. We're almost there now. We have a new we have a new book in the Witchland series, for those who are fans of that. This is book number 5, actually, and it's coming out on the 4th of November. We also have a new Adrian Young book coming out on the 4th of November. It is a young adult again, and it's called Fallen City. Another one that was mentioned a lot was Empire of the Dawn. This is the third book in the Empire of the Vampire series. Still on the 4th, we have a new Marissa Meyer book. This is either a new series or a standalone, but it's a new Marissa Meyer, and it is a YA retelling again. And then on the 11th of November, very excitedly, we have a sequel to Will of the Many called The Strength of the Few, which is book 2 in the Hierarchy series. Heated debate on the cover changes. I actually don't mind this cover, but I do agree the first one was just much more vibey. And this actually was number 3 in your top 3 most anticipated books of the releases. So we still have a little whiles to go until the 11th of November, but I'm sure it will be here quicker than we wish. Still on the 11th of November, we have the sequel to Legends and Lattes called Brigands and Bread Knives, which is a cozy fantasy, like very cozy. And still on the 11th, we have a T. Kingfisher. This one is called Snake Eater. That is a cover. That is a cover. And this is one of their horror, thrillery fantasy books. I always find Kingfisher to be quite humorous, so even though it is marked horror, I'm kind of expecting similar vibes to like The Hollow Place. And then on the 18th, we have a Greek mythology fantasy called I, Medusa, which has a very striking cover. And then December, we have a whole total of 1 books here of the most requested on the list. And it comes out on the 12th. It is a Cassandra Clare one. And also in the Shadow Hunter realm. I don't know how long it's been since that was filled up a little bit, but obviously it is a very long series in general. But this is actually a collection of short stories, and it is a urban fantasy. But that's it. We made it. I hope this was useful. Let me know what you have added to your TBR, if anything. There were some books here that you weren't aware of and are very excited for. And especially let us know if something wasn't on the list and you would like to recommend it to other people and is something you're very anticipating. I want the comment section of these videos to always be very fun to browse for others. But that's it. As the slide says, thank you, bye!